My the mic is steady, but it's still beer down my pants. Anyway, that's cool. I got no place to go, and I got another beer.
Uh,
Some people are actually having trouble adjusting to this quarantine situation.
We don't even ever turn on the heat. So.
This is a weird time of year here. I actually had to start this one just on fan yesterday for the first time in a while. Because it's hot. Today it's chilly.
There he is.
Enough about the weather.
Oh,
Afternoon, gentlemen.
I got a weather. Yesterday, my wife told me it's colder outside than it is in the house. Because I had some, I was trying to air out the house a little bit, but I guess it was a little bit different there. I muttered, I don't really give a fuck. But
Are
it
you
wasn't
under the impression that she doesn't know you smoke pot?
No, this had nothing to do with
house?
This had nothing to do with weed.
Okay.
It was blowing all the coronavirus out of the house. Fans.
Yeah. I just want to, at this point, I want the fucking mercy kill. Anyway, how's it going, fellas?
Here we are.
Some quarantines are better than others.
I'm saying.
Are those vintage memorabilia shirts you're offering online there, Andy?
Which one? Oh,
well, the now
Bernie?
defunct Bernie campaign.
Well, that one's damaged. I cut the sleeves off of it. Like I was a Bernie bro back before Bernie Bros existed. Like I got the shirt.
The original bro.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable, so I hacked the sleeves off of it, and I just wore it for jogging. So now, it was kind of started the whole thing. Like probably a couple other Bernie Bros saw that and like, fuck yeah, I'll get the sleeves off of mine, and start shitting on people online.
Yeah. I also have spindly white arms. I should cut my sleeves off.
Yeah. Hey, you don't even realize this party. Yeah, everybody's about the front part of their arms. They ignore the back part of their arm.
Fuck. Good afternoon, fellas.
Indeed.
I didn't even really. I was like scrambling to get set up, and I was like, we didn't even get a confirmation on whether we're doing one, but I assume because nobody's got anything. Like the other day, Shaylee had the day wrong, which I was like, how the fuck, like Shaylee's the guy you ask what day it is on the road, and he always knows, and he knows where we're going. He knows how many people will be in the seats and shit like that. And the other day, he's like, be ready to go at noon. It's like, I think it's a day off.
Well, I knew what was up because Shaylee sent that text a couple hours after I left the funhouse, and I don't remember leaving the funhouse. So
yeah,
I assumed Shaylee was probably pretty fucking liquored
up
as well.
I read it as a blackout text.
Yeah.
This shouldn't have been sent at all. He won't remember this text.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, something's going on with my texting. I think I said that in the last podcast. The best way to get in touch with me is email or phone, because for whatever reason, Google Fi, which has been up with, I'm with them for a year now, we're getting that T-Mobile thing where I have to go upstairs of the funhouse to send or receive texts, so it makes it kind of useless. And then I got a notice from them that they're changing some of their policies. It sounds like you're changing some of your equipment. Because I'm getting what's the Mexican one? Telcel. We're right on the border. Yeah. I'm getting a stronger. I'm getting a link to Telcel at the Funhouse instead of Google Fi.
Yeah, well, that's probably pandemic related, right? I know it's 5G that's causing all the pandemic.
I have yet to look that up. I've only seen vague references to it, so I don't even know what it is. I thought about it this morning. I go, I should look that up and see. And I go, nah, I don't want to.
Ignorance is bliss, my friend.
I don't care. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I got to put that in my book of things to tell Doug in 30 days.
Wouldn't when we went from 3G to 4G, wouldn't that have caused like at least a couple of 100,000 dead?
Just the
Yeah,
cold, just the
'Cause we have-
sniffles.
We
They were
have jumped
testing a
G,
new one.
we have gone G jump before.
Yeah,
and
I
everything was cool.
actually saw someone post this, I think sincerely, that 5G is COVID-19, 4G was Ebola, 3G was H1N1. It's like, hey, same time. It's like, yeah, there's one every year. So
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that happen every year.
yeah.
They just found two things that they wanted to be
Yeah.
That's
paired
funny.
up.
Every
if-
time the Patriots win the Super Bowl, there's a fucking pandemic.
I think that why is nobody talking about the real fucking controversy of the 3G 4G type thing is I used to be able to stream Netflix on 3G. Now if it says I only have 3G, it's like I went back to dial up. You can't open a web page with 3G anymore, but I used to be able to stream Netflix with it. I don't
Yeah, they're trying
understand
to get
that
you
at
to
all.
upgrade, dude.
Yeah, that's them.
Well, it
improving
upgraded
service.
automatically, but
We just needed that information. It was like we're getting that information, but it's like, God damn it, I have to pause and wait for this information. And then it's like we can bump that up a little, but it's not going to come easy.
Sign right here, sir.
It's gonna
I
melt
was-
down the world, and you're gonna have to fucking stay in your house for a while. But you'll have information lickety split.
I was thinking, they make a lot of comparisons. They go back and check in with things that happened in 1918 during the Spanish flu. How fucking intolerable would this be without the internet?
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? I mean, even
Yeah.
movie theaters, at least the movie companies have gone, well, we're going straight to Netflix. We're going straight to distribution. And now they're getting to test their models that they've been kind of tiptoeing around because sometimes they do release the same day as theaters and stuff. But now they're getting to go. We have to. We've got to figure out some. I just was having issues the other day resetting the routers here. I'm like, there would be riots in the street if you had. What are we gonna do? Read? No
Yeah.
one's gonna fucking get a book. You can't go to the library.
I think in 1918 you just sat around and stared at your family until all of them died, and then you considered incest with the survivors. I don't think they had really good television, so it's like, God damn it, she does look like her mother enough. God damn it, we ain't getting out of here.
everybody will just have to shout their political opinions into a
Yeah.
bucket.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Same fucking thing.
Yeah, how did they even know what was killing people? There was nobody to spread false information back then.
Yeah. No
Well,
way to make people
It's
freak
ready
out.
to
Or
go.
there was Hitler,
Yeah, well, that guy.
Mussolini.
Boy, what would Hitler have done with 4Gs or 5Gs or whatever? He would have been a madman with 5Gs.
Yeah.
spread
Yeah,
the word
not
a
like
little
he
better.
was. Not like
Yeah.
he was without it.
Yeah. Good thing
He
we
could-
didn't get the bad Hitler.
Yeah, Hitler could have figured it out that you don't need to put all that energy into getting the Jews into a train and into an oven. You just give them a fucking encouragement to go to their church service on Sunday, spread a little virus. Hitler would have gotten a fucking way better body count. I mean, not way worse. I didn't mean better.
Wait,
You knew what
Because-
you meant.
Because of the Holocaust to this day, I've still never had anyone interested in managing me. So
That's why.
that's what I've come to. Would have been a lot more manager types had that not happened.
Oh, I get it.
I need good management,
Yeah.
not that makeshift Scottish type of thing.
the one that gets you paid.
Yeah, that kind.
Oh shit.
This fucking squirrel's making me nervous today. He's starting to get really aggressive about 3 walnuts, beat it. I think. Is
You
that-
created a welfare society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you
Yeah.
got-
I'm not.
Now
I
you got
don't,
expectations to meet.
He sees
I'm
the
not-
Bernie shirts.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Here,
They
let me
would
get
just
it.
jump from animal to human again.
New strain.
Yeah. The
Oh, this
Eugene virus.
I believe this is the anecdote. Come on, fella, take a little bit. There you go.
I don't think.
Why do they call it the Inman flu?
One thing I've noticed, and I'm not a scientist, but the more weed that guy gets, more he wants peanuts. Like one of them cause and effect things. You smoke the weed.
I have some anecdotal evidence I could add into that. That happens with me too. So you might be onto something.
I'm thinking peanut edibles might save me a little time and energy.
Well, you've got time.
Yeah. Hey, I did I dug through. Well, you guys have probably found some fucking ridiculous use of your time that you would never have imagined. I have a box of sports cards I've been toting around my whole fucking life. I sold a bunch back in the 80s to get drugs, and hey, it's quarantine carry. So I got this box of cards, and then I started, an auction. Oh yeah, let's drink.
Cheers. Whiskey.
I don't have a shot, but
that's a shame.
Cheers, boys.
I didn't even get to. I started to open a beer.
Big glass of whiskey, brother.
What?
A big glass of whiskey.
That's a sipping whiskey. It's not a shot whiskey.
Erickson, do we need to get you an on-air light so you aren't interrupted?
It could help. The problem is that here in West Hollywood, the studio bleeds into the lobby and the
break area.
The break area and the kitchen. It's all sort of in one sort of quarantine containment zone.
You know what sucks about quarantine in Hollywood is everybody's in the industry. Like, Jesus Christ, you go into the kitchen, there's industry talk. You're taking a shit, you hear industry chatter. Fuck, man.
Yeah. Speaking of industry chatter, the Pikey in L.A. closed down forever. That's the former Coach and Horses of Stanford fame.
Okay.
The Pikey is not going to make it through the quarantine. They've closed down forever, which proves that if you fire me from hosting your free bar show for insulting Kelly Osbourne,
you've got
3, maybe 4 years tops, and then it's done. You're done. You're finished.
Especially when it runs in tandem with a quarantine during a international pandemic.
That was just a catalyst, but the writing was on the wall from that moment.
You'll rue the day 3 to 4 years from now, if there is a pandemic in which the United States White House is ineffective at watching.
I know it seems like all sunshine and lollipops now with Obama in the White House, but just you wait.
I'm going to try a little social experiment.
What are you doing?
I don't know if squirrels do craft beers.
It's giving the squirrel beer.
Well, he smokes. It's my only friend to get high with.
So
he drinks beer, we'll hang out more. Hey, get out of here.
Wait, you just train him to drink your beer and smoke your pot.
Well,
it's like
I'm afraid it's
a monster.
I'm afraid it's gonna leap at me, get like Sean Rouse. I get too fucked up and then leap at me, and then
Sean Rouse never leaped at anybody. Sean Rouse may have stumbled at you, but he didn't.
He didn't have the pound for pound, he had way less strength than a squirrel. Not even close. Like he couldn't even grab a branch, let alone cling to the side of a house.
He could lunge. He could lunge at you.
Only if he started uphill from you.
Yeah.
Well, if he was real close to you, I guess.
Yeah, if he had the high ground.
Fall over on you, lunge at you. Same thing.
So he doesn't enjoy beers at all.
No,
at least not craft beers. He's probably like a Miller Lite drinker.
Yeah, he's like a regular Joe like us.
But it's also it's a chick, so it could be Pragered,
So just weed. So just weed.
Yeah, you don't want a fucking Down syndrome squirrel. So here's what I learned by going through my sports cards, hundreds of fucking volume. I kept fucking garbage cards for years. Like fucking, it was so liberating to go through and throw all the white guys in the trash. Sorry, except Larry Legend and, a couple of Mark Prices and Steve Kerr. The rest of them.
Mark Price?
I don't know.
Oh my God.
A forgettable bunch, Mark Eaton, I kept one because he looks like Bigfoot, but I don't need 30 of those. Benoit Benjamin, the ultimate enigma, the first clubhouse cancer. Well, one of them. Kept him. He had a real tiny head, so it's interesting. But I went through. I was like, oh, I'll get a card for each one of the guys on the thing. So it's like no problem. There's Brett Hull. I found Brett Favre. Tracy was no. I mean, I know she's our bartender, but there's Tracy, Greg Harris. And then I found plenty of Andys. Andy, fucking forgettable Andys, not a popular.
Andy Van Slyke.
Aikenheads?
That's all we got an
Okay.
Andy Van Slyke.
Yeah, Aikenhead never made the bigs.
Big
He
show.
had a hell of a fork ball, but it was in his head.
Just ask that man boy.
Yeah, the man baby.
Yeah, baby.
But I got hockey, football, basketball, Desert Storm, Elvis, Looney Tunes. I could not find a Chad in any fucking sports league going through fucking hundreds and thousands of cards. Not one Chad. I was laying awake at 3 a.m. going, wait, wasn't Xavier McDaniel's middle name Chad? So I rifled through hundreds of cards to find Xavier McDaniel. I didn't even cheat it with the internet and found out, no, it's not Chad at all. So I don't think
if you name your kid Xavier, you're gonna choose Chad as the middle name.
Well,
Could be John or something.
Sure, but if you name your kid Chad, he ain't making the big leagues. That's the point. It's like you limit your kid.
When I've seen a lot of people named Chad were like privileged dudes that were, it was a upper crust name. It definitely was it was an odd name to be as a redneck in a little tiny town, as Chad for certain.
I was using you as a reference and thinking, well, maybe Chad's just the guy who kicked the shit out of the jocks in high school, never tried out for the team.
Hey, Andy, maybe take a second look at your lacrosse cards. Maybe there's a Chad or a
right,
Dusty
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, I guess I was just going with the the
Top
big
5.
sports.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
There was the Anchorage Aces, which was the East Coast Hockey League, which included teams in Sacramento, San Diego, Russia, and Anchorage. So when Russia came over, they played everyone all at once, like in one long week. Chad Richards was the enforcer for for the Aces, and he was quite a big deal because at one point when he got off the ice was a big. And at one point, he threw his gloves into the audience, into the fan. Well, not the fans, because we were down in San Diego when it happened, and he got suspended for throwing gear into the seats. I don't know if you can. I don't know if East Coast Hockey League. I don't even think they took pictures of teams.
That's what he didn't make the bigs. That's not the big one.
Yeah, no card for him. Here's my. I found this. I was like, oh, cool. It's an autograph. But I remembered what happened. It's I don't know if you can see it, but it's
there it is.
It's Sioux Falls Canary. KG. This is KG Canary, and it has CC written on it. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I was like, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. I had to sign the card myself because the bird just kind of waved me off. Like no, like no. What do you mean?
And he's like, card.
He didn't sign autographs.
And cancel my bid.
It was
He's
kind
like,
of
I don't have hands, motherfucker.
It was
stupid
bullshit,
ass
'cause
kid.
I was
bird
working.
costume.
Yeah, I was working the game, so it was a slight. I was doing play-by-play announcing and then it was I was the headliner at Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I started the week headlining that club. Jesus Christ, asshole! Sorry, this guy doesn't know we're podcasting here. So as part of well, I remember it was it was a really
microphone, like to him, like, oh, I don't want to hear that guy to hear me.
Yeah, I know. I yelled right, like my dad when he used to call. My dad was in in his wheelchair, and then people would call, and he would go to the edge of the stairs, and he would yell into the phone, "Hey, Andy, Andy," and then he would mutter something like, "Oh, I guess he's up there listening to that rock and roll." So I did the same thing. That's from my daddy, who died of COVID. My dad died of COVID too. back in the day. You,
I do want to know why you covered the mic, like Chad said.
I think because he yelled, he didn't want to peak the meters on the podcast. That bury the needle. That's what.
He didn't want
Well,
the
this is
live
why-
audience to catch
exactly
his
why I
banter.
only did a half inning of baseball announcing too. But I was the headliner in Sioux Falls, and part of it was the headliner went to go do a meet and greet at the ballpark, like an hour or two before the show, like a meet and greet, and give out beer mugs and tickets to the show, like an asshole. But you got to do play-by-play for a half
Wait a
inning.
minute. Hang on 1 second. You went an hour and a half before the show. You went
Just
to
about.
a baseball game that was happening. That's going to be 3 hours long.
Yeah,
To give
and-
them tickets to a show that's going to be happening
Never put it
from about the
together.
4th inning to
Sure.
about the 8th inning.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was. I mean, it was the nuttiest fucking thing. Plus, I got a ride there with somebody in like a Better Saul Call first 3 seasons car, no air conditioner. It was like 100 and something. And I walked around there and then I just ended up handing out beer mugs to kids. It's like, here you go, give this to your old man. Here's some tickets to the Funny Bone, and I got.
Kids.
But here's the fucking shitty part of it is I was headlining that week, and then by the time I got back from the ballpark, I was a headliner of a 2-man show, and I became a feature in a 3-man show. After my first show, they were still obligated to send me to the ballpark, but they fucking replaced me with the feature, moved up the lineup. So it's just a
Yeah.
baseball decision, you know.
It dropped down in the order.
Yeah.
Hey,
Did they come up to you and say,
the lefty in?
yeah,
I found
did they
out- I
come
found
up to
out-
you and say, we are going to be hitting cleanup tonight.
No,
pal."
basically, here's how I found out: is the guy who I was like, oh, there's a new guy here. I'm emceeing, and he goes, what do you want me to say or whatever? And I gave him my thing, and then he got up there and he says it right away. I'm like, dumb motherfucker. And then I look around, and then the club managers will go, you know, like, what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna, you know, like, oh shit, okay, I guess I'm, you know, I'm DHing or somebody's DHing for me or whatever. So I did the show, and then I found out that it had to do with Dennis Miller's brother anyway, I got fired, demoted. I got demoted. And you know, that kind of stung a little,
Yeah.
you know.
I played Sioux Falls, South Dakota one time as well, and I didn't get demoted from headliner, but I got fired from ever coming back because the feature I brought, his name was Travis Lipsky, and and after that
Cagey
weekend,
Canaries.
they didn't want us back. He drove it into the wall so hard on the last night that they were not going to pay him for the whole week. And as terrible as that sounds, I argued against it, but was losing the argument. So
So much
I
so
never
that
went
you
back.
couldn't go back, right?
I couldn't go
Yeah,
back. I was
yeah.
done. I never played
I
there
wonder
again.
I never got the invite back either. I mean, it was like, can I come back to feature anyway? But the first night I went up there was like there's probably less than 10 people, and the club manager sat in the back there. She'd heard good things. She told me when, you know, we talked a couple days later, and she said, you know, we didn't talk about it after, but she said I made her cry after the first show, and not in like a good way, you know, not at all happy or reflective tears. These were rage tears, I believe. And it was all because, like, you know, I get to a place and I don't know shit about Sioux Falls, so I read a newspaper and it said Sioux Falls moves down the list as places to raise a kid, and it had dropped like 6 or 7 places, you know, substantial from the previous bullshit year numbers. So I said, you know, and I noticed on my way to the club there was a lot of broken glass on the streets. So I said, you know, I said, hey, I noticed you guys moved down the list. And I said, here's an idea, you know, sweep up some of that glass. And it wasn't even funny or anything. It was like a civic, you know, like helping them out, you know. It's like take it and go with it. Yeah, like, and I don't remember what would have made her cry, but I do remember standing at the bar, and there was a guy who was missing an arm, who was standing at the bar with the missing arm closest to me at the bar, and he was pissed off at me. He was fucking really pissed off, and he wouldn't let it go. And I was like, finally I had to walk away. But I swear at one point he fucking threw a phantom punch with his missing arm, because he was like, his fucking face changed and shit, like he just landed a blow. I'm like, hey lefty, I'm leaving, man.
That would have been awesome if you like stuntman took the shot.
Yeah,
Just gave him that like, wow, it worked.
and I struggled. I know I struggled that
that's
first night, but
funny.
I know that the guy who headlined, who replaced me, he was up. I know he closed with a bit of, if Jesus had a brother named Jeff, and it was like, no, call Jeff, or whatever. It was like 14 quick fucking bad jokes, and I was like, and I was sitting in the back going, so that's what it takes to headline. I'm gonna write that down. Look for the light. Look for the real light. Acknowledge that real light and say, is that the correct light, or am I once again seeing something else? Okay, that's the light. Okay, well, let me give you what if Jesus had a brother named Jeff, and 6 quick punchlines, and then wave goodbye, and I'll be selling Jesus is his brother Jeff shirts in the back.
I love it that Andy, to put it in context, Andy was on stage complaining about a town when Andy's from a town where everyone is a child molester.
Well, sure.
Maybe she
there's
knew
no
that.
broken glass
Maybe
on
she
the
knew
street,
that.
though.
Well, there's no gig in Coquille, Oregon, or I would have done it.
Maybe that's what made her cry.
Here's a funny one that involves our favorite squirrel, Wenatchee, Washington. This is years ago. The first time I met James Inman, we worked together a one-nighter. We met in Wenatchee, and that gig got pulled as soon as James got done talking, basically. I think the reason David Tribble called me is maybe Inman, but he said I got us fired for here's what my morning wake up
still maintains that.
Yeah, David Tribble had that fucking room, and he must have known, he called the motel and just ring him up, and I answer, and he goes, well, hello, Mr. Andrus, you just lost me a room. And no introduction. So I was like, okay, all right.
Have you heard about Jesus' brother, Jeff?
Yeah. Oh, no, that guy was on a whole different circuit. Tribble was a lower level circuit. It was the minor leagues to the majors. There was Chads doing these gigs. But Inman did, okay, so it was Wenatchee, Washington, and they had what was it? It was a sex scandal, and I think it turned out to be kind of false, but there was a daycare sex scandal where a lot of kids said they got touched inappropriately.
Like the McMartin?
So I riffed on that for 10 minutes. I'm new to the town. I didn't know it was such an eggshell topic or whatever. Several walkouts and complaints, but I really feel like and then I see this fucking bald old dude looking fucking guy, pudgy husky fuck, come in, and he goes right to the bar and starts hitting the whiskey, and I see this while people are leaving. I see this fat guy come in, and because I hadn't met the headliner, and then he goes up and he starts in about national NRA shit, which isn't any. I mean, their feelings are afraid about the sex scandal involving the local church and a daycare center.
You warmed him up.
But Inman kind of pissed him off. I mean, I could see. I mean, I hurt feelings, but Inman pissed him off, and so we got Wenatchee was pulled, and then we got to know each other. We got to bond. We did Yakima the next night, and then. I was driving him, and then in Yakima the next day, I couldn't find Inman. Like, he went missing, and it's like I only knew him for like a couple hours, and we got fired. We had one gig together, and the room was closed forever. And so we get the Yakima with higher hopes, and JJ Walker had just been there, so what could go wrong? Well, there was still a half charge of dynamite around. But I bombed. I know I bombed and I left. And then in the next morning, I'm ready to go, and I'm pounding on the door, and that fucking husky fat dude ain't there, and I don't see him. He's not there. He won't answer the phone or anything. And then I'm going to drive around Yakima. If I don't see him, I'm hitting the road. And then I see this dude. He doesn't have a hat, so I didn't know this guy was bald. And then he's walking around. He's carrying a brown bag, and I stop and I go, Inman. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, yeah, and like gets in like I was, like this is normal. And he gets in the car, and I go, what's going on? He goes, I did laundry, and this girl, I picked up this chick, and I was fucking her, and she puked on my shit, and she vomited on my hat, and my wife is a psychic, and she's gonna know. And so Inman's, like I didn't know this guy, and he gave me enough information in a 4-minute rant that I knew enough to stay clear for the rest of
that you sped off in the car.
Yeah,
and dusted him with gravel.
Right. So then we got to drive from Yakima to Salem, Oregon. It's a triple gig, so it's a short drive. And I drive
19 hours.
Yeah, through the Columbia Gorge. Inman demands I stop at the first place, and he's headlining, and I hadn't heard from Tribble that Yakima pulled, so we're still good to go, So we get like 10, 15 minutes up the road, and Inman sees a place. Stop here. Stop. You know how he is. He's a fucking baby. And he's like, I stop, and then he gets out, and then he returns with a 6-pack of Zima, which I'd never seen before. I thought it was some sort of a mineral water or something. This guy's agitated, psychic wife, this fat chick he porked, it's turning into a pretty good road trip, and he pounds those fucking Zimas, I didn't, about the third one, I started getting the gist that these are booze drinks. You can smell them. The sweet, sugary fucking shit and the conspiracy theories bouncing off of my head, and I'm fucking flooring it. If you hit that stretch of road at the right time through the gorge, it's like the Autobahn. You can drive 150 miles an hour if your car will do it. And I've got Inman, and he's blowing fucking booze in my face, and he switched from talking about his psychic girlfriend's gonna bust him for cheating on her to aliens and how we're all this other shit, fucking Illuminati and shit. And he's got a piss. Like it's like, like I went on a long road trip with Art Krug, and he really hates to stop and use the bathroom. He likes to make good time, right? And he's like, no, let's just push through. So I learned not to drink a lot of beverages when I'm, riding with somebody else. But Inman, he's pound them 6-pack of Zima, and then he has to piss every few minutes. And finally he's like, fuck, dude, fucking arguing and shit. And then, it's like, James Inman. Here's the worst part, though, is I left Inman in Salem. I had to go home and get my daughter, and she was going to stay with somebody in Salem it was like I had to go pick up my infant daughter. Inman this is the worst thing I did with my kid. It was terrible.
You left your daughter with James Inman?
Okay. I did two terrible things. I did leave her in the car with Inman while I ran into a mini mart. I got my kid, returned to Salem. I had to pick Inman up because, of course, he's headlining, so I had to drive him everywhere. And so I got to drive him to the gig. Then I dropped my kid off, and I stopped at a mini mart and left my kid in the car for about a minute, because I ran out and didn't purchase anything at the mini mart when I realized the mistake. But before that, when I stopped at the motel to get Inman, I went to my room, and I had my kid. She was in the car seat, and she was wailing at me because, she hadn't met Inman yet, but she could just already sense it. How like some dogs won't go near bad people. It's like, my kid was screaming like fucking holy hell. And I was a new parent. I didn't, I was like, had her in a car seat, and I was fucking just rode with Inman all day. And I didn't throw the car seat, but I did. I threw the car seat. I gave it a chest pass. I didn't hurl her. I didn't do a discus throw. I didn't do a what are those fucking chuckleheads do when they throw that big heavy? Yeah, it wasn't a hammer toss. It was more of just a chest pass, but I was fucking angry and stop yelling at me, you fucking asshole. Because I didn't baby talk my kid, you know. A lot of people go, what you do? What you upset about? I was like, yeah, you're fucking ruining my life. But I was talking to Inman. I was hoping he could hear it through the door. I checked her, and then she landed on the bed in her car seat, and those things will bounce. So it bounced, and she toppled off and landed on her head, and that did not stop her from crying neither.
Weird.
Strangely.
Yeah. So that was the worst thing I ever did, but I blame Inman. It's like a whole day of that shit. You're gonna kick a dog or yell at a kitten.
Hey, Andy, you know when you said, hey, you know how those baby seats bounce? You realize the three of us, none of us agreed. We don't know that those bounce.
Yeah, I forget you guys
We're
don't have
alone.
kids. You don't have kids, or you'd know. Oh wait, Erickson went through it. Never
Yeah, I
mind.
did throw
Yeah.
them often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done. What was the worst thing that you did, like a snap moment with the kid, or? Kid.
I had a moment where I yanked my son by the arm when he was like 4 or 5, like get over here, and it hurt him, and I felt fucking terrible. I'm like, oh, that was a close one right there. I better go to the garage for an attitude adjustment.
Could you imagine being a Republican, like a fucking religion, like that doesn't even register as you did anything wrong? Okay, I'm installing discipline.
That's just good parenting.
Yeah. There's a comic you might have run across him, Greg, as Kelly Moran. He was friends with he's friends with a bunch of Seattle guys. And anyway, he was a great keyboard. Well, he was a keyboard act. I won't say great. Kelly said he was great, but Kelly Moran, he's since died. He's dead now, so I can reveal his secret. But he told me one time, as I was a new parent, and he goes, let me show you a trick. And I didn't like, he gave me a fucking nerve pinch, and he was a big fucking taller dude, and it hurt like a motherfucker. And it put me down on the ground, and he goes, that's what you do when your kid acts up. And he goes, you'll thank me later. And I fucking used that. It's like a Vulcan control. And I didn't have to,
Pitch.
it ruins your child's ability to enjoy ever being touched. It does create trust issues. And I only used it a few times, but I did. One time she bit me we were at the Holt Center, which is a real nice art center type place. And she bit me bit me. Like, what the fuck? She bit me. And then I put her down with the thing. And it was like it was a big hallway thing. So it was like kind of like a cast of an opera standing with the audience all standing around. And my child bit me, and then I put it we gotta leave, this is it's not the kind of place for this, but yeah, I can really count on there's like 3 or 4 times where I was like did something where I really felt bad about it, and verbally or whatever, I would always explain to her later way too much detail of how it was my fault and I overreacted,
Yeah,
because I didn't.
That's how I ended up stopping giving a real shit about sports. Is that I used to be like, I remember my son was like 5 years old, and the Bears had just lost another fucking Sunday game. And my son came up to me with like, Dad, you want to do something to play a game? And I'm like, get the fuck away from me. And I just started yelling at him, and the look in his eyes like, what the fuck did I just do? What is wrong with you? And I was like, oh my God, I'm an asshole.
Who was
and
the
then I
quarterback?
realized it probably didn't matter.
It was the quarterback.
For the Bears?
Yeah.
It could have been anyone.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it was Cade McNown that pushed you over.
900 quarterbacks.
Cade McNown that finally pushed you to child abuse.
Yeah, it might have been, who was it? Yeah, I can't even remember. They've had so many.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was pre Jake Cutler, I can tell you that.
Here's something that happened on 9/11. I got Stanhope gave me the news, and I went for a walk. I took my dog.
You heard about 9/11 from Doug?
Yeah, he called up and I was outside to get Ty, and my wife said, somebody just called. I think it was your friend Doug, and said the world's ending. And I went, what? And I went running to get to the TV and turned on CNN. And then I, sat there for the next 3 years. I'll never forget that 3 years of doing nothing, worrying about the terrorists.
Quarantine.
Yeah, self-quarantine. But and then I was walking with my dog, King Sydney at the time, but Sydney was up. I took it out on the dog. I mean, she was being defiant, and I had the leash in my hand because I'm a poor dog. I let my dog free range it, and I have a leash. If anybody makes a fucking statement, I'll put it on a leash and go, "Yeah, you happy? I'm following the law." Yeah, I hope you're happy now because this is fucking boring me. But so I took the leash, the dog, and I whacked it in the ass a couple times, and some fucking car stopped and said, "What are you doing?" I wasn't beating it like Michael Vick style. But it did kind of pull me back because I'm not a fucking ruthless. I don't beat animals or children without fucking, good cause. And,
it's got to be more than international terrorism.
But I don't think that lady had any idea about 9/11 at that point. And I was all weeping and hitting my dog with the fucking. I'm sure she understood once she got home.
That dog deserved it.
Yeah.
Shit.
9/11 sucked.
Let's be honest.
For you,
9/10 wasn't great either.
9, yeah. Well, 9/12, it's like any other day.
9/12, we all started coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody hoarded the toilet paper. Everybody just hung flags up.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine fucking Trump getting on the wreckage of that and with his bullhorn? Look at this. The numbers are fabulous. Look at the ratings. Standing on rubble of dead people going, "Oh, this is great."
I'm number one on MySpace.
I have lots of Fave 5 black friends on MySpace. P. Diddy's on there.
God damn it.
Oh,
so this kind of puts a damper on our taking the show on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back. America will survive it.
Yeah, don't be so sure. Bernie,
I guess we could start booking China. They've kind of opened up again.
Does this mean Bernie can tour with us? I mean, we just give him a few punchlines. These 1%ers own 1%. How about you suck my cock? Something. I mean, that's the
that'll be perfect too.
Yeah,
because we can get bumped back down to feature like we're comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, Bernie just I hope he can fucking relax now and do more town hall Bernie and less of this fucking, he just it's like one of those, like, Trump wasn't so good on it either, but it's like, man, it's stressful to be fucking touring around and doing gigs and shit. Trying to convince people to listen to you.
Probably more stressful for you when the manager comes in again and says, "Hey, we're gonna make a change up in the lineup, guys. This Bernie guy, we're gonna kind of bump him up."
Oh,
co-headline.
Yeah.
Co-headline.
Sure.
This is more of
Let me guess. The Jew. Yeah. Figure.
This is more of a Jeff Christ kind of crowd. Your whole brutal take on the local community. And she said what she said is she said she was what I had to say made her cry, and quite honestly, it made everybody in the room upset. I was like, that one-arm guy, because it's like I was being defensive.
He had two arms when he came in here.
And I go, how many paid customers were there on Thursday? Huh? Like I was fucking defensive because oh, here's the weird part of that week.
Like you had a strong box office, Andy? That was
yeah.
So, look, man, like they didn't pay for the room already.
Yeah. Hey,
And
there's already nobody coming to my shows.
Right. Well, it was Thursday night, man, and I was the new guy or whatever, and I came with good recommendations, but they didn't vet it very well. Uh, Lisa Young vetted me in Idaho with her crowd. You can't send me to
What I love
fucking-
about working with Andy is he's always surprised when he mentions right off the top the latest local tragedy, and then is surprised that for some reason he hasn't created this aura of goodwill and happiness in the room. We did that gig on that big lake in Montana a couple of years ago. You remember that, Andy?
Oh yeah,
And the
yeah,
gig-
yeah.
The
God damn
day
it.
of the gig, on the other side of the lake, a giant a deck, like there was like a home for like wayward boys or some shit
No, it
like
was
that.
yeah.
Some Christian camp or something, and they were having their end of the camp party, and there were like 80 of them on this wooden deck, and it collapsed, and 6 children died. And Andy's like, "Well, I know what I'm opening up with," and then we were switching off who went last. You know, we were trading. So this was Andy's night to go last, and I'm downstairs outside talking to Mitchell on the phone, and Andy goes up. I hear the first part of the all the kids are dead bit, and I'm like, well, I'm out of here. And I'm talking to Mitchell on the phone, and about 5 minutes later, a couple of people walk out and they look at me and they're like, hey, and I'm like, what? They're like, no, good. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, hey, I picked up, what? And they're like, you have got to come in here and get your boy. And I'm like, what's going on? And I
Fucking
walked in there,
kill
and
the messenger.
everybody was fucking mortified in there.
Yeah, it was a beautiful
Because
place.
The best part about that kind of thing is that there are two kinds of people in a situation like that. There are the locals who are personally touched by this tragedy and who know someone who is adversely affected, so they're not going to like it. And then the other kinds of people are the people who haven't heard about it yet. So they're hearing news of this local tragedy from their comedian. And they don't care for it that much either, it
How
turns
the
out.
fuck do you think I feel? My show was ruined by dry rot. You know? What are the chances that my fucking show will be ruined by dry rot? Fucking termites. It was the killing termites that ruined the show.
Yeah.
One little tiny bit at a
Totally.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I hate it when shit like that happens, but you got to be a good reporter. You got to go out. You got to deliver the news, even if it's hard, man. You know, what do you open one on 9/11? 9/11 happened. Hey, people are taking to outdoor chickens, growing. Backyard chickens are all the rage. Oh, in other news,
Never forget.
hey, if you're planning on flying anywhere, you might think twice. Oh man.
It
Yeah, so-
almost went. It almost
I
went.
know.
man.
I
saw it.
moved.
It wobbled.
I did some thinking after the last podcast, and it's like I like the height of this table, so I grabbed that table instead of having a bench that didn't have the right height to it, with a step stool on it and then a book to keep it up that height. So I was like, I replaced, I took 2 pieces away and replaced them with one. And so the mic, I mean, the mic's still precarious, so I don't want to
Yeah, hey,
raise
Andy, it seems like Andy's always like got his laptop on a lazy Susan because he's always spinning it. Was that just a book you got it on?
Well, no, it's on I have a towel on a
Well,
table.
No,
Because I jack off.
Can you just tip the screen down? I just want to see what your right there. I just want to see what your mic is on.
Oh, this?
Yeah, now move your hand. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Is that
I don't see
cardboard?
it.
I have it on a bench,
Is that
and then I have an
cardboard?
empty shoebox, and then I got this piece of tile that my daughter got in Indonesia. They gave this fucking thing from a tile factory. So, and then on back of that, I have a canister of propane that weights the whole fucking thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well,
I did wonder why the propane was there.
ballast.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
spilled my the mic is steady, but it's still beer down my pants. Anyway, that's cool. I got no place to go, and I got another beer.
Uh,
Some people are actually having trouble adjusting to this quarantine situation. I'm wondering how I went out so much as I did, you know. I used to like when I was home with my kid before she was even, you know, babbling language or whatever. I wouldn't go anywhere or have conversations or whatever. And then when she got old enough, I would take her places and she would do all the transactions so I wouldn't have to. And I would, like at Trader Joe's, I'd estimate what it was and give her the money. And then they would go, oh, like they'd start talking to me and I'm like, talk to me. I'm not your customer, you know, because I didn't like doing that, you know, like, what are you up to today? Or do you find everything you need kind of shit? It's
and
like,
then
I
the
didn't
clerk is like, oh, young lady, you're buying this 12-pack of IPAs, I see.
No, I didn't. I mean, it was just
Mango.
groceries, you know, but it also taught her how to, you know, to do transactions and shit and make small talk, you know, it's like, look, I've talked to nobody but my child for like, 5 hours, 6 hours. And then I go into a store and there's, you know, hey, what do you think of the weather and shit like that? Just leave me the fuck alone, you know. Like why do checkers assume everybody wants a greeting, you know?
It's worse than that in Los Angeles, dude. For some reason, bank tellers are now the people who ask me how's your day going today, sir? It's like, I'm here to fucking get some money out of the bank. We don't need to have this
That's part of that
conversation.
whole customer
Why don't you
service
check
thing.
my balance?
Fucking
You know,
stupid. Yeah,
go
just
ahead.
listen.
Look at my balance, motherfucker.
yeah,
Don't fucking amuse me.
If we were friends, you wouldn't be on the other side of bulletproof glass. All right, let's just fucking do the transaction, and I'll be on my way.
Yeah, no, you know, as soon as he goes, he's like, well, that guy's pretty upbeat for being so fucking broke. I wish I was like that.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah,
look at my balance, bro.
Look at the balance. You know, I'm not a good customer or one that your bank
Yeah.
as a corporation wants to keep around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
the
like
customers
it now,
any bank wants don't even go to a teller ever. So you know, if you're talking to the bank teller, you're already fucking 99%.
They have a banking concierge.
Here's my small talk now is like I'll hit places right when they open, you know, before others or whatever. It's just me at Rite Aid. It's just me and the lady. It's like, how's the rubbing alcohol?
Well,
You know,
hold on, Andy. First, you get there early, release the raccoons, then you go wait for the manager to open the front door.
Yeah, no, I stopped the raccoon trapping. It was got to be a hassle, and plus the South Hills. If I started trapping them, I'd be overrun. You know, I'd be busy all the time. But
you might have a Netflix documentary about you, though, the Raccoon King.
Yeah, I'm getting real close to that squirrel, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be defined by it.
So you go to the pharmacy or you go to the CVS?
Oh, so I'm there first thing in the morning. But here's my new small talk, and I do better now than I used to do with small talk because I used to I don't like answering questions they don't care about, you know. But now like this lady, she's like, "How are you doing?" And I go, well, you know, fucking end of times, right? And she's like, yeah, you know, I can kind of relate to people. And it's like the thing I like about it, and I've said this to 2 or 3 checkers, is the thing I like about this is we're all equally fucked, kind of. And it's like, it's, you know, it's so refreshing. It's not just one group or whatever. It's like anybody who gets exposed to it is fucked. So, you know, it's not like you can buy your way out of it. Or if you're, you know, look at John Prine. It's like he's got a bunch more songs to write and he got fucking aced by it.
Although it is coming out now, then it's reassuring to some, I suppose, to hear that some things never change because black people are dying at a much higher rate of it than white people. So, you know, racism gets to still exist. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm
I
hoping
mean, it's not good.
I'm hoping I like to think of it as I think of it as the glass is half full, Brett. I think that there's going to be a lot of white people dying after Easter Sunday. Because the black church parishioners, they don't seem as gung ho as the black ones are like, well, maybe we'll stay home and see how this goes, but the white ones like, oh hell no, we're going to show people we can fucking go out there and arm in arm and show this is our moment, white people. And I hope
washed in the blood of the lamb.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those Billy Graham. My dad used to listen to Billy Graham, and I've always known evangelicals are batshit crazy, weird fucks that just fake motherfuckers. But now it's just wonderful. Kenneth Copeland. I would love to see the fabulous Gemstone with Copeland. They're gonna all that money he gets at Easter Sunday is gonna be vacuum sealed and washed. It's gonna go to a third world country to be fucking sorted and shit and put in offshore bank accounts. It's gonna fucking
yeah.
Oh,
he ain't gonna. He's probably got fucking giant things sucking all the fucking air up into the ceiling, so nobody can get close to him with
negative airflow room.
Well, those stages, they're like it's like 20, 30 feet to the first row because they need all that space when they start laying hands and people start falling. Yeah. But I mean, he's already separated by 6 feet minimum.
I wonder how that works now with faith healing because you got to put your hand on them. But what if your hands ain't clean? What if,
interns.
Yeah. Before healing anybody, make sure you wash your hands through the eternity of the Bible. Just scrub them. Yeah.
Wash your hands, but not in a Pontius Pilate sort of way, more in a Jesus Christ sort of way.
This is Holy Week, right? Yeah. What is? I mean, like every day of this week, there's something, but there's the foot washing service. I wonder if they're doing that one. That would be hilarious. Going in and have their feet washed during a fucking. They did it during the Black Plague. Never mind these rats. Let's get our feet clean. Let's have some mead and clean our feet.
Pedicures during the plague.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking earlier about things that happened before. What was the World Series cheaters? That was a year before this pandemic.
That was a year after. That was 1919. The Black Sox
doesn't quite work, but here the Houston Astros should be being relentlessly booed every place they go for banging on garbage cans and giving away signals throughout their whole World Series championship season. Fucking cheater motherfuckers, and those guys get to fucking sit home in quarantine with all their money and fucking revel in their big fucking rings. Doing their drugs and shit. They're all smoking weed now too. Baseball players don't give a fuck about this bullshit. Like, good, we don't have to play that boring game and we can smoke weed now.
Mm-hmm. Their contracts are guaranteed, so they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, when's the first sport gonna come back online?
I know
Special Olympics.
Special Olympics. What did he say?
Special Olympics.
Special Olympics in 2026.
It's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, everybody's going to have so many birth defects and fucking deformities. By 2026, they'll just make the fucking deformities compete as countries. It'll be the humpbacks versus the microcephalic baby heads and the fucking, flipper babies. Of course, they're going to have an advantage in the aquatic sports.
They're going to win the swimming events.
What about them Roundup? Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You don't think you could run that fast, but
well, you just lean your giant head forward and let gravity carry you across the finish line.
Yeah, I think most of the fucking normal people will be dead by then. Only special babies born with some defect. Oh, he was born without the ability to really process air, so he's actually thriving in these new conditions. That's who we send to the store.
Oh.
Right on. Here's to it.
Travis
Gin
Lipton.
Press.
Oh, okay. I got to finish this. So this is a weird part that happened in Sioux Falls. Is I mentioned there was a new guy, and the new guy needed a place to stay. And
Wait,
as
hold
I
on.
was
This is wait. Which
when
one
I
is
got
this?
when I got
They
fired,
demoted from
I got
headline.
demoted from
There's so
headlining.
many. I'm
Okay,
trying to put it.
but
Is this
so-
with Inman?
No. This
No.
I was headlining with this guy. I got fired. Basically.
After he did,
Whenever
after he
I got
called the
bumped up to
baseball game.
headliner, I got put back down in the minors, again, to get over an injury or a drinking problem or whatever. But so out there in Sioux Falls, the Thursday happened. I did the game situation, met the MC, and he was kind of a Sean Rouse-esque little man. He wasn't crippled, but and I forget his name. But anyway, so I'm no longer the headliner, so I'm like, you can stay with me. I had 2 beds, and I had to do radio in the morning. Anyway, so I go to bed. This guy's asleep in the bed next, or he's in the other bed. The MC's over here. I'm on the right side. I get up to go do morning radio. Mainly, I just listened to the guy talk about if Jesus had a brother named Jeff on radio, but I had to get up and go to radio. And I get back, and so I see that guy, the Sean Rouse-esque kid, MC, is in my bed, curled up in a spoon position. So I sit down on his bed, and I get up immediately because that bed is wet. So I sat down, and this guy pissed himself in his sleep. So he crawled into
Are
my
you
bed.
sure it wasn't Rouse?
No, it wasn't. I got to research and find out what happened with this guy, because I heard other stories of him blackout drunk, not like this, but so I like sit down. I realize this guy pissed himself or the bed, and so I'm like, fuck, man, and I take my shit off, and I'm changing clothes, and I'm like, and I realized, like, wait a minute here, this guy's fucking spooned up, but so I got up out. This guy pissed his bed, and so he's naked. There's another part of it. He's naked. I was like, hey, dude. I was like, hey, man. Hey, I woke him up because I'm kind of bummed out about things, because I had to do laundry now. So I'm like, hey, man. And he goes, oh, and he, it's like he's a blackout. So he's like, and he pissed. So we established he pissed his bed, took his clothes off, and crawled into bed and curled up next to me. And I was pretty drunk too, because I didn't take to being demoted very well either. So I got fucking drunk. So this guy pissed his bed, got naked, and crawled into bed with me, and I only had underwear on, so it was almost like so. So then after that, like I'm the middle, and so the final night I brought
Sounds
him
like
up
you were
on
the bottom.
Yeah,
Well-
seems like you got way demoted.
Well, what happened is I said, like maybe let's split up, let's get different rooms. And so he goes, so did you get me another room? And I go, other room, I'll be taking the other room, because I'm still at this point, as far as the roster card, I'm still the middle. I have not been dropped to MC yet, but this guy, so he pissed himself, crawled in bed with me. I went and did radio, and then how you were talking, how I ruined shows with current events. I talked about how I didn't realize I was a homosexual or whatever, and every time, because he'd introduce me and I'd give him a longer hug and make him uncomfortable and shit, and then I opened with how I was a homosexual now, and I think I kind of eased into the week that way. And then again it was probably that same lady. She didn't want to pay me neither. She said, why, but here was the thing, is I'd done a little research and found out she didn't own that room. It was she was getting fucked by the guy who owned the room, not in a business way, but physically getting fucked on the desk. So I kind of brought that up. I was like, I just want you to write the check.
But how do you know that, Andy?
How
is that?
I do drugs and I hang out with people with axes to grind. It's kind of like you go, oh, I hate her too. Why do you hate her? I also made out with a woman at the falls, and then I don't remember her name or anything about her. And then I go, "Can I get your number?" And she goes, "No, but we'll always have the falls."
Oh, God.
Bless her heart.
Yep.
She
And
didn't need to do that. I was having a
that's-
bad week.
that club was no longer a funny bone right after that, too, as I recall.
Right?
So,
Yeah. I killed the funny bone there.
funny bone. You did good work there.
Yeah. She sucked me off at the end of the week as though I hadn't been demoted. Right there at the falls. It was like, holy
Maybe she
shit.
was- Maybe she was trying to get some comedy out of you.
And then
Maybe it comes out of this end, she said.
she wasn't interested in laughs.
Hey, this machine's dry.
And the worst part was getting out of Sioux Falls is so I got paid. I finally got paid, and then I got really fucked up with staff. And I went drinking I remember being in a garage bar, and it was loaded with people, and everybody was chanting my name. And because they saw how the shows went, they knew I was destined for greatness.
I would love, this is one of those moments because we don't have anyone else here who was at this event, but I would love to now hear the actual story that happened that led to people yelling, Andy.
It was staff.
And how different it is from, and they were chanting my name.
Right, well, it was,
Your Honor, I call head waitress of the South Dakota Funny Bone.
Yeah, the police
Nate
were
McMillan
probably
to
there.
the stand.
I remember it clearly. I was working a four top. I just hustled the crowd out of there that hadn't paid very well, and I got tipped
They
about
cut
8%.
almost all of the staff because Andy was there for the second night.
Yeah. So anyway,
It was
so
me, one bartender, training bartender, and the cook.
yeah,
That was all of us.
and so I do remember there was a bit of a snowstorm, which was weird because it was in the summer. But so it's blow, and I was with some people. I don't, it's how you load up in a car, sort of right on the verge of blackout. So you just kind of retrace. You remember finding a breadcrumb, and then it's like somebody hits you in the head with a hammer. And then I remember coming to in that basement or that garage bar. It was not a bar. It was just a private party, like a fucking college party, and people were chanting my name. And I walked forward, and it was a keg stand, and I'd never done that. I'd never even heard of such a thing, keg stand. But blackout drunk me ran into sober enough me to go, "Hey man, you better put your shit over somewhere where you ain't gonna lose it. Fall out your pocket, stupid." So I took my check.
So you hid your money in the corner?
I took
Billy
my
threw it
check.
into a fence.
I took my check, money, my plane ticket, my wallet. I don't even know if there was phones back then, but I might have had one, a flip seat phone or something, or one of them big fucking. I probably had one of the big. I put my CB radio over in the corner, but so I wake up like I do. Somehow I got back to where I was supposed to be. Just fucking late. I was meeting some people for brunch. So they took me to brunch, and I was like, I don't remember anything. My mouth's all dry. I don't fucking have any of my shit. And I got to get out of there. He's like, you need a ride to the airport. Well, I don't have a plane ticket.
Or my wallet or any of my money.
Or such. And so, and then I didn't even know how it got retraced, but eventually, hours later, I got a hold of somebody that remembered where they took me or where I was, and then they, it was like hours. I missed flights and shit, and then I finally got to that fucking place. I was like, none of it was familiar until I saw the garage, and you smell it. You smell that smell.
Yeah, I've been
Even
here.
blackout drunk, Leonard Skinner can still smell their car after they crash it. I was like, oh fuck, and it's like, yeah, and then I remembered the keg stand, and people it was like almost not ever going to be famous or whatever. That moment where I jumped off the roof into the pool, only I did a keg stand, and I don't know if
Golden God.
yeah, I was drinking Golden Ale upside down, I guess, and I don't know how that ended, but I do remember when I got to that garage, it was sticky as shit and it stunk, and I walked to it, and then I was like, You know, because Blackout Drunk, me and me, we know each other. We know each other's tendencies. I go left and walk over to the extreme corner. There's like a little, thing for exhaust or something. And it's like I look, and there it is, all my shit, all stacked up in the corner of it. So I managed to get out of Sioux Falls without any trouble.
That is a beautiful story. They all lived happily ever after.
And I was
Gentlemen?
never asked back. In fact, I lost some funny bones I was established in after that.
Well,
That was their
Fuck the
way of
funny
doing
bone.
things back then.
yeah. Fuck the
Yeah.
funny bone.
That's when I realized it's a corporation.
That's what Lisa Young told us is the reason you always went back to Idaho, to Boise, is because they didn't always use their corporate booker to put people in there. Lisa Young actually was able to say no to certain ones, and she never really had to rebook someone that she didn't like, and she always booked you.
Yeah, I was like somebody who appealed to like.
She's not in the business anymore either, is she?
Right. It was like she was like a comic book store owner, and she really dug
Lisa
the
was great.
comic I put out, but she couldn't sell any of those comics to other places. But she cultivated. That was the thing with Lisa's. I met Hedberg, I met Mark Gross, I met Nick Griffin. I didn't meet any headliners
Oh,
that
those
weren't
guys.
heavy hitters. And she cultivated comedy and I thought it was like that everywhere, and I would bounce
Yeah.
around.
Oh no.
I remember once I drank wine and had sleeping pills before a show, and it didn't go that well.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring that up because
Yeah.
I'm looking for
Did
the
she-
link right now. She was on a Doug Stanhope podcast recently when we were up in.
Did she bring that one up?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But she was in the hotel room the night
Let it
after
go,
we found
lady.
the gun in
Yeah.
Spokane.
Yeah. But yeah, here was the thing about it though, is I got really drunk and she goes, "Thank God for Nick Griffin." She just kept saying that, and we went to eat, and it was just me and her in this empty fucking cafeteria, and she gave me enough shit but didn't overdo it, It's like every few minutes I'd take a bite of rice and she goes, "Holy shit, drinking wine with pain or with sleep meds?" And I was like, that Thomas is a rat. Let's not forget I was ratted out by Thomas,
So if you want to catch some more, it's great. Doug is interviewing Lisa Young, the legendary Lisa Young from back in the Boise, Idaho Funny Bone days. It's episode 357 on the Doug Stanhope podcast. Just go to dougstanhope.com. And she is still a fucking kick-ass, Andy. And she has so many stories
I love her.
about you.
Yeah. She got a hold of me. She's, she wants to get emotional with me, or, like we're friends, we love each other, and it sucks because it's like, I don't need this. I don't need love.
That's
But,
the same thing she said.
Yeah. She, but Vic Henley died, and he was, I never met him, but he was friends of friends and in the circle, and she got a hold of me and she says, isn't it weird how Dave Attell is now the eulogist for everybody? I said, not, but he's doing all the eulogies for people. But she was so good at booking people that's why I met Hedberg. She goes, "I just thought you two guys would get along." And man, did we, we fucking had fun. I remember
She has a story on the podcast where she tells Doug the first time Hedberg and Chard Hogan walked into the Funny Bone. It's fucking great. Yeah, and I didn't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah,
check it
she's
out.
just kind of knew that. I wish if comedy was like that everywhere. It was so heartbreaking. It was like heartbreaking to. I mean, I went from Harvey's Comedy Club, which sucked. Barry was such a fucking cunt, such a condescending fucking guy. And I went over to Boise and I found a fucking home. It was like, holy shit. And I met some of the greatest comics and people that I've ever got to hang out with. And it was all Lisa. It had nothing to do with corporate.
100% her.
Right on.
And then
well,
she
here's to
quit
Lisa
because-
Young.
Yeah, there just ain't enough fucking bookers like that.
No, there are not. my
And then
friend.
she left the Funny Bone in Boise because they started booking for her, and she wouldn't. She loved comedy and listening to. Like I remember sitting in the back of the room or upstairs. That Boise room had an upstairs balcony at one point. I could be anywhere in that room. Hedberg could be eating a miserable dick there. It took him a while, to get on to Hedberg, but I would hear her laughing in the back. And it wasn't like she was a bullshit laugh to try to get other people to laugh.
Yeah.
She just fucking loved it, got it, and was greatly amused by all the conservatives not getting it. And eventually that was one of the best rooms in the fucking country for a while because of her fucking education of the fucking nitwits that I got away with so much and I learned so much.
There you go. All right, gentlemen. Any final thoughts?
We're still doing. Go ahead, Andy.
Wow.
There it is.
Oh,
There's his plug.
I don't do it on purpose neither. No, I'm done stealing dirt. Other guy with your truck. It's wide open, man. I got all I need right now. I can't use any more. Plus, I hurt
Wait
my
with
shoulder
bated
on that.
breath.
I got a little
final
greedy with one of those whole trash cans full of dirt, and it hurt my shoulder putting it up into the truck. So I'm done. Still hurts.
Stanhope Podcast. We're still doing 30 days news blackout. So if you have suggestions for the show, you can. Best way is just email me at stanhopepodcast@gmail.com, and we are going to go through. I think we're just going to go to the end of April, which will be 28 days, but close enough. Just because it.
Are you guys doing
later.
like? You guys should do decades. Like today, we're just do like Casey Kasem radio.
Yeah,
we're gonna
we've
do,
got a bunch of suggestions.
280.
Yeah.
You're gonna do 28 decades.
Well, I'll try to find bad news from 1984 and be bummed about that.
World history rather than talking about current events because Doug's in a total news blackout. The problem is I'm drinking so much that I just have enough time to get the fucking podcast up for the previous day, and then I have to do another podcast.
So,
like right now, we're doing another podcast right after this for the daily one with Stanhope, and then I have to edit. So
it feels like you should add a blackout to that. Like it's the news blackout. Like,
that happens every day.
Yeah, you guys are binge drinking, and you're forgetting problems you don't know exist, and you have no idea. It's like your news blackout's only half of the problem. Maybe Dr. Drew should explain the coronavirus to you guys. You guys would still be a month back of the news. Oh yeah, it's just like the flu. In fact, it's pretty funny to do jokes about putting lime in a Corona beer.
Well, Chad, I had to deal with a bunch of shit the day after you were here with Joby and we did that podcast. I realized about 5 a.m. I was still getting texts from Olivia about us going over to her house, and that's when I was like, yeah, that's pretty shitty. Us going en masse to Olivia's house, and we're all pissed drunk. And we're walking down Black Knob in a group, when we're supposed to be social distancing, and we're like the villagers looking to lynch Olivia because she sequestered herself doing what she should be doing, and then we're trying to break down her fucking door, and then in the morning I'm just still hungover, and I'm like, that was so shitty.
Yeah.
Why did you fucking do that?
I think if you see that in.
I'll give you one guess why we did that.
It feels like the Black Plague when people would show up with torches to sing Christmas carols. No, we just want to liven your spirits.
That was all yes, that is exactly what I think we were thinking at the time.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
We'll
it
let
was Stanhope's idea. We were going to go entertain Olivia and say hi. And we were too drunk and we went way overboard.
I'm sure, 6 weeks ago, people were like, John's been home alone for a while. Let's go over and cheer up John Prine. Surprise him.
And also, right now is not a good time to meet your neighbors, as we found out from the dogs from Henry Phillips running loose to a neighbor's yard. It's not a good time. Not a good time. No, there's no over the fence type of thing.
My situation is very good here. There's not enough neighbors, but I got an Al Swearingen look on people. Like I got 2 decks that are above everybody, and I could fucking make judgments. I can tell people, go home, quiet that muffler down. Hey, whatever happened to your dog? Did it ever return?
Andy on his porch eating a can of peaches with a knife.
Yeah.
Well, I did hear Austin, so next time I got to get close enough to remove a collar, because he is still an asshole. So yeah, that's my plug. I'll be chasing Austin down the street.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Well, that's the dog. That's the dog I had trouble with, and I tried to rescue. I rescued by running it like 15 blocks.
Oh,
off.
that dog. Yeah, you scared it off.
Lose situation for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dog.
Now I'm such a weird name for a dog. Austin is a weird. That's who calls their dog Austin.
He could have called it
Like-
Chad.
Yeah.
That would be a better name.
Well, it's a minor league
Or
dog.
at least
It's a
as
minor league
weird.
dog.
I'm just realizing one of my problems. I will say one of them is I combine everything into a blender, so it doesn't work necessarily for a stand-up comedy show because you got your act and you got your current thoughts.
Wait,
sometimes
you're in your
Unrefined.
You're in your 23rd year of stand-up comedy, or this is occurring to you now?
Well,
That you
This is-
that you jumble all your words together, and
I
then they
never-
come out in just a random order.
exactly.
Regardless
It's my-
of whether you're on stage or not.
The fact
Oh,
that people have been
exactly.
telling you this post-show, almost every show over the last 23 years, you never listened to any of that, but now
never
it's
had-
occurring.
I never had time to really just sit back and soak it in. Now it's pretty fucking apparent when I'm combining 4 or 5 podcasts in current conversation. I'm sorry. To reference Austin the dog being chased off, you have to go back 2 or 3 episodes. But it's still currently going on. Because, hey, man, God damn it. Fucking Colt Seavers. Fucking, I don't like any of them. Fucking white trash replaced. Anyway.
I fucking love you guys. All right, everybody.
man.
Hey,
Like and
I'm
subscribe to
gonna
the
be
channel.
sad.
Follow.
I'm going to
Follow,
be sad if I hear you guys get sick.
I've been trying to end this fucking podcast for 20 minutes. You guys realize that,
I
right?
don't have anything to do.
Well, you need to do your set design for next week or 2 days from now.
All right. Okay. I got you. Perfect. I don't know what I would do to improve this. Except I lost the hair on this little guy. He's dumb.
Hey, here's to the Lansing lug nuts, guys.
Yeah, lug.
Nuts!
Go nuts.
Nuts!
Go nuts, man.
I'm going. I'm already there, man.